Okay, so the draft is still going on. I should mention that I am recording this as the 7th round is about to start. The Browns do not have another pick, so if they happen to trade back and get another selection, I'll write out my thoughts in the comments below. But I figured I wanted to get one of these out here early. Try to get these videos out for you as quick as I can here, as I will be doing this for every single team. And so right now we're doing the Browns just because they were probably the most interesting team of this draft class, or at least one of the most interesting teams of this draft class, and I wanted to talk about it. First, I got to explain the chart you see next to me. This will be the chart for each one of these videos. The first number is where they were selected, so Mason Graham was selected 5th. You didn't have their name, their position, and where they were projected to go according to the consensus big board. You see some pretty crazy numbers on that side with the Cleveland Browns. But first, let's talk about the trade itself, going back in the draft, selecting Mason Graham and not selecting Travis Hunter, a player a lot of people probably would have gone in that scenario. But I think the Cleveland Browns, quite frankly, just said, usually, historically, if you trade back and there's not like an elite quarterback there, you pretty much always win the trade. Historically, that's usually how it works. The losses are usually slight and the wins are usually massive if you are the team trading back when you have a premium pick. So it's usually a great decision. Of course, it goes completely without saying that this is a unique scenario. Travis Hunter is a unique player, but ultimately they elected to still kind of go with that philosophy, and I thought about it a lot. I think it's the correct call. It's worth mentioning, one of the best things they still have in this draft class is not even shown here. It is the Jaguars' first-round pick next year. The Jaguars expect to be better next year, but hey, you can't guarantee that, so definitely good to be getting that draft pick if you're Cleveland. They also got Mason Graham, who's just a great player. He should be an awesome interior defensive lineman who is a monster in run defense, but he can pass rush as well. You put him next to Myles Garrett, and that should be a lot of fun for Cleveland. So that's kind of the premium pick in that decision. But of course, there's a lot more selections they made. Carson Schweschinger, never really learned how to say his name. An interesting linebacker. He was projected to go a little bit later at 46th. He went at 33 here, but is very much a bowling ball type linebacker. He uses his speed to get places, should be a great blitzer, could be a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah type here. Isn't going to overpower a lot of offensive linemen. That's just not really his game. 6'2", 225. That's kind of what you're getting there. Next up, we have Quinton Judkins, who's just a really quick player. I mean, when you watch his film, you can see just the speed that he has. He ran a 4.48, which isn't like blazing, but when you watch the tape, it is just different. He can really move. Yes, he had Henderson to kind of be sort of the complementary. They could complement each other, I guess I should say, and that's maybe the concern is he a 3-down back? Maybe, maybe not, but he should be a really good player, and actually was my running back number 2 in this draft class. I really like his game just because he's so good at accelerating. He moves well while at a top speed, and he might be the most explosive running back in this class, so I am a huge Judkins fan. Next, they decided to go with Harold Fannin Jr., the 20-year-old tight end who, not the biggest tight end, only 230 pounds, but has a good frame. I do wonder if they decide to put a little bit more weight on him. I'm interested in seeing what they do with him and Njoku. That's kind of a unique pairing right there, but ultimately is a player who, again, I really liked, and he was projected to go 77th. He ends up going 67th, and I still think that's a fine quote-unquote reach here, because I think he's a good player. And sometimes tight ends are just weird, where sometimes tight ends fall just because, not that many teams need tight ends, because there's only, a lot of teams only want one starting tight end, because they don't want to put a ton of resources into their backup tight end who's only going to get 300 snaps a year. That's just how some teams view it. So because of that, sometimes some pretty good players end up falling in that scenario. So now we got to talk about the quarterbacks. And you know what? We can kind of talk about them both together, right? I know that there's a player in between them. We'll talk about Dylan Sampson when we get there. But for Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, so I was shocked when Dylan Gabriel went 94th. I wasn't stunned that Sanders had a fall, although I was stunned that he fell to 144, but I wasn't stunned that he had a fall. Dylan Gabriel is someone who I kind of said might be a Gardner Minshew type, right? He's an older prospect. He's not a big prospect, and those are the concerns. But for someone who was picked at pick 94, you're not going to have a easy pathway to being a starter. Cleveland might actually be the best case scenario for him because he can compete for the job. But essentially, you're going to have to be good right away, similar to Gardner Minshew, who, say what you want about him, was at least very good that first year, right? So you have that. Very good's probably too strong of a adjective there. He was solid right away, and because of that, he was able to kind of stick in the NFL for a while. I think Gabriel could be similar. He does move well when he's under pressure and can put the ball down the field. So because of that, he was projected to go 178th. That's a pretty massive reach, right? And, we can talk about the consensus big board all we want and how much does it matter, but the reality is typically when you draft a guy who was projected to go 180th and you draft him at 94th, typically they play like a player who was projected to go 180th. There are exceptions, but that's typically what happens. So let's use that to shift gears to Shedeur Sanders. So does it work the other way? If you draft a player who was 12th on the consensus big board at 144, do they usually end up playing like the 12th best player? Usually they end up playing like the 144th best player in this scenario as well. Usually if NFL teams do this, it's kind of essentially the group think or like the consensus mindset. More minds tend to be better than one. A reach could just be one team falling in love with their own evaluation, but when someone falls this far, that's 32 teams agreeing with something. So yeah, it's a weird thing. The Sanders fall was weird, right? And there's been a lot of talk about what happened. Ultimately, I think that's been done to death. I did not think Sanders was an awful prospect. Like, I didn't have him really. At first, when I first evaluated him, I didn't have him as a first round talent, and then I kind of talked myself into it and gave him a first round grade, but it still was a lower first round grade. So I wasn't shocked to see him fall out of the first, but like, there are things he does really well. Like, he sees the field very well. I think he can throw while getting hit and throw off balance in a very good way. There are massive issues. And I think the reason why he ultimately ended up falling is you're getting a project quarterback who isn't an elite prospect, right? He's not an elite talent. So unlike Anthony Richardson, who is a project, the ceiling is like huge if you can make it work. For Sanders, there might not be that ceiling and there's a lower floor. There's other reasons, because the tape is good enough to not be drafted at 144, but if he was Cam Ward talent, he would have still gone in the first round, right? So ultimately for Cleveland, I have no issue with this pick. I actually like this pick a lot. We'll see what happens in the quarterback room. You still have Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco. It's not out of question Joe Flacco ends up winning that job, as crazy as it sounds, but at least, with this, you have opportunities here to maybe make something work. Finally, let's go Dylan Sampson, who wasn't their last pick, but is just the last pick I'm talking about because I want to do the quarterbacks together. Dylan Sampson, running back out of Tennessee, really explosive running back, really can move very well, a very good speed, which is one of the main things that you're going to look for with someone like him. You do wonder if some teams maybe didn't pay as much attention to him due to just being 200 pounds, 5'11", not a huge back, and kind of looks like it as well, which makes him not necessarily the best blocker on top of it. So there's some of those things of how many situations are you going to have him in. That being said, projected to go 90th, goes 126. As much as I talked about with Sanders, how like teams there is groupthink here that only goes, so much, right? And at the end of the day, you would like to be on that side as much as possible. So being on this side instead of the other side is usually a good thing. So ultimately, it's a pick. Again, interesting that you have him and Judkins. You wonder if one of those guys is going to play special teams as well. And by one of those guys, I mean Sampson. But yeah, kind of interesting there. A position they wanted to improve upon, it seems like. So ultimately, yeah, I mean, a draft that was wild. And I'm going to say a draft that I ultimately liked by the Cleveland Browns. I think they made some smart decisions, and I'm a fan of this. I don't do grades. I just kind of give my opinions on things because grades can get tricky, and then people only pay attention to grades and not the analysis. So that is my analysis on the Browns draft. Again, there will be 31 more of these coming. Hopefully, there'll be a lot tonight and then a good chunk tomorrow. That should be all of them. So be on the lookout for all of that. I will have winners and losers at the end of this as well. So yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.